It's 1:02. We're going to call the Board of Ed workshop of January 26th to order. We're going to make just a slight adjustment in the agenda so the folks from Middlebrook can go first and then get back to the building.
We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for pinch hitting.
And so we were kind of presumptuous in assuming we were going first. We just sat down.
Middle school people. Yes, thank you. You are great minds think alike.
Okay, so we want to thank you, the Board of Education, for your ongoing support and dedication. We truly appreciate the countless hours that you devote to our schools and the community. We also want to thank our central office staff who lead us every day as we strive to do what's best for kids. Rory wishes that he was here today to present this budget. His leadership, passion, and diligence makes a difference at Middlebrook every day. Karen Lamantia's support and organization is instrumental in putting forth this final product. We are also extremely grateful to Marianne Salvato for her tremendous knowledge and willingness to always help. We are presenting a budget that we believe will meet our student, staff, and school community's needs for the next school year. We all recognize these needs are greater and more complex than ever before as we strive for excellence in academics and student continued growth in all areas. Our budget, while lean, supports the Middlebrook mission statement and our students' journeys as they build the attributes of the Wilton Public School portrait of a graduate. As we look forward to our next school year, we will focus on the following priorities. We need to take exceptional care of our students, staff, and families at this challenging time. That includes adopting a schedule change. We require a budget that will ensure to the maximum extent possible that students can focus on learning and teachers can focus on designing outstanding lessons and continue to create and maintain supportive relationships with students. We recognize that these relationships augment the learning process. Our priorities: to support the instructional core and to consistently deliver our rigorous academic program. To continue with the district and school priority of facilitating the growth of contemporary multiliterate scholars, balanced, healthy human beings, self-navigating expert learners, courageous, ethical leaders, creative entrepreneurial designers, and active, socially sensitive citizens. To meet and exceed the academic, social, and emotional needs of our students, including the continued impact of the pandemic. In addition, we will continue our investment in school climate programming, including the web mentorship program and training solid web leaders, and summer days to adjust to the new schedule, including social emotional learning. We intend to prioritize professional learning efforts for teachers in academics, social emotional learning, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the area of program improvement, we support a new course, specifically a STEM class, which will be included in our Stride offerings. As we all know, new courses generally require summer curriculum days, materials, supplies, and professional learning costs. I'm going to turn the mic over to Nicole to continue the presentation.
I get to do the nitty-gritty stuff. So big picture, year over year, Middlebrook is typically at about a 1% increase. I'll go into that a little bit more later. But this year, we're at a negative 1% decrease. And currently, we are at $29,311 decrease from last year's adopted budget. Budget to budget, our teacher FTE are proposed to go down 7 FTE to 91.5. And our student enrollment is currently projected to be at 816, which is 79 students down from the October 1 report. We're not asking for any new positions. However, we are looking to reallocate for the new STEM course from our math applications position to a STEM course for that FTE. As we began the Middlebrook process in the budget, we began automatically cutting 10% and looking at where we could get a little bit leaner in all of our categories. As of January 10th, we further reduced $9,925 from the instructional improvement. That would include a Power School University PD for some of our secretaries, web training, language arts training, social studies, and math, a little bit from each one. And then also, we had put in $2,000 for supervisory services for landscaping. That was out of the base budget, actually. We do have some increases, mostly driven by inflation, as many things are. I set $9 for pepper the other day at the store. I didn't actually, I found something better, but $9 for pepper. Language arts training, $2,600. Math texts, $3,900, and those are consumables, workbooks. So
These are the increases that go in.
Art equipment, $1,400. That's for the new kiln. The other one cracked. Family consumer science supplies, science texts, LLC contracted services, and supervisory training for a total of $22,051 is the increase. And then I have our year-to-year over the last 10 years, but our 10-year average is an increase of 1%, and this is proposing a negative 1.06. And I just want to say thank you again for all of your support. And we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah. So Nicole, a couple of things. Would you mind just talking the board through, as some of the other administrators have, just where you've made reductions or where you guys have been lean, if there's been an impact on teachers or others, what that's been, and then if there's anything as you guys were, kind of building that didn't even make its way to me,
Right.
If you would just, if there's anything like that, can you just talk about that?
I think as we were looking forward to, continuing to improve in STEM, that's something that we reallocated, but I think if we can continue to build that, that would be something to be looking forward to. I also think that we're looking to keep 3 language arts teachers as interventionists, if that's a possibility to continue to support as we move into the new schedule. And then just something that's not necessarily in our budget, but that we continue to value you guys supporting and talking about is some of the bonding for our building and our facilities, and to continue to improve, because we are putting Band-Aids a lot of places. And we have to really look big picture as we move ahead.
Great.
And some of the other just changes that you'll see as we move over last year's budget to the originally proposed, and then revisions for some professional learning costs that were reallocated to the district professional learning budget, including in language arts.
So those reductions that you just spoke about in PD have been reallocated?
Not the ones that Nicole listed, but one that was specifically for language arts in the teachers' college monies that were reallocated.
That was
to the professional learning budget.
I guess I'm just going to tear a Band-Aid off, and if this schedule change doesn't get voted through, what then? Just, it's surprising to me to see a budget that has a negative $511,000 plan with the assumption that this is going to get passed.
Yeah, that's not them, that's me.
Okay.
I wrote that assumption in. And so the answer to your question is this. We would look at still reducing staffing, and so it would be incredibly messy. I shared with these guys a doc the other day. Just if we were to, like we have with our elementary schools and even the high school, just follow a pure kind of enrollment reduction pattern, what that would mean is we would reduce, if we kept, so we'd start with kind of a class size average foundation of around 20 to 21 kids, give or take. So looking at that, we would go department by department, and so across grade level, what that would mean is, somewhere just over maybe 3.5 staff taken out of 6th grade in the core areas. I think about 2.5 and then 1.5 in 8th grade proportionally. What that would mean mechanically would really be to undo the team. So you would have 2 plus full-time equivalencies trying to cover 3 teams, and so you would have both teachers and kids now bleeding across teams. And we'd have to really get into the mechanics. That's the next step of doing the full analysis. But that's one big piece of it. The other piece that we have to look at are the other stride instructional areas, and so for a school that's, right now just a little bit bigger than Cider Mill, for example, we run PE classes with 2 full-time PE teachers. We run 3.5 at Middlebrook, and part of that reason is they all have full schedules, but it's the distribution of kids, and so we'd have to look at how we redistribute kids. Kind of moving through each of those areas, we'd look at art, and then we look at music. One of the gifts I think that this district provides its students and families is the way that we provide instrumental music instruction, and so our kids get to work in kind of very small ensembles, 3, 4, 5, 10 kids. But when you're talking about an entire cohort of kids working off team, the rest of those kids have to be distributed someplace else. So you've got multiple sections of art running, multiple sections of PE running. If we're going to look at contracting staff, then we also have to look at changing how we do music instruction in those areas. And I think all of it is going to be very highly disruptive.
So what if, I guess, and like very black and white, and I know nothing in this budget is black and white, but so you remove $511,000 of teachers of FTE.
It's the equivalent of 7 right now.
Okay, so the equivalent of 7. I guess I'm like, where's that cost savings in here? Like, what's picking up the 500? It doesn't look like it's.
It's not, and so that's the. For several reasons. On an FTE front, it's a wash because we're pulling the FTE that are currently sitting in the ESSER grant that's going to expire at the end of this year into the budget. So you have the 2 classroom teachers at Millard Driscoll.
Got it. So the ESSER is going across. So that's what I keep looking for. Is
So if you go to the so you should see. You should see, I think I'm actually missing the front summary page. So at Middlebrook, you should see a reduction in dollars in FTE, but then it's, the other areas, and Marianne, you can help me out with this.
Like that's what I'm looking for, is Middlebrook has that reduction of
Yeah, the 511.
Yeah.
Yep. So
like, where is that? Like, I can't figure out where that is, Middlebrook to Middlebrook. Hold on, Marianne.
So you're dropping 7 at Middlebrook, but you're not necessarily picking them up in that location. So you have to look overall throughout the district. Where are you making your FTE changes to see where you're picking that up?
Yeah. So
we know that about 4.45 of that comes from the FTEs that were in the COVID grants.
But
that are expiring.
You're talking dollar for dollar.
Yeah. I'm talking dollar to dollar in Middlebrook. So I understand that it's across the ESSERs. But like, so if you're giving 500, let's just say in really basic accounting terms, you're giving $511,000 back to the Middlebrook budget. I'm not seeing where that's being taken out of the Middlebrook budget. Does that make, I'm not seeing a big line item for 511, and I know it's not going to be one line item. I'm not seeing 10 line items that add up to 511,000.
Right. So if you go,
you only see the reduction of the 511 on the one line, which is the language arts teachers.
Right.
So you see the reduction come down there.
Yeah, I think you go.
And you see a reduction come down. The reason that you're not seeing it in math so much is because depending upon where the remaining teachers fall on that salary grid, if they advance a certain step, their advancement wipes out the reduction.
Yeah, and the other if you go down the column, the 23-24 change, and you just look at the collection of the increases that offsets that reduction.
Like that 14,000, 15,000.
You got it.
That will add up to 100.
It does. If you go right down the actually, so the last.
And I know the insurance says 190,000.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it seems like I'm just not seeing the.
It seems like you should see it a bigger number.
Yeah.
I know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Because I've looked at it a few times.
It's just like, I almost want the Excel document to and I'm not saying that I'm questioning the math. It's a big minus, and I'm not seeing a big plus.
Yeah, so right, I totally see what you're saying. So the 58,377 increase in insurances.
Right, and I get that.
Plus the 15 in salaries, plus the 20, right, all of those total up. There's 22 in the boiler and air conditioning repair, another 12 in Social Security, another. Yeah, that would be interesting. Marion, maybe that's something just.
So I have the Excel document up.
Yes.
I'm just
Sorry.
double checking,
Yes.
just by highlighting the column.
That's kind of what I was looking for.
Just to make sure that
Yep.
the formula is doing what we want it to do,
Yep.
and it is coming out to the same number.
Okay,
Great.
got it, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that, I mean, it's brutal. Like, it's the story
That
of
you're
the
just
inflation this year.
maintaining-
Yeah.
Right, well, it's just in response to some of the conversations that have been coming through our emails and conversations that people have been having, that this is a cost saving. This is actually like, not even a cost saving, this is a cost neutral. So there's really, it's not like we're saving the whole school budget by,
No. No. And I think the, another way to look at it, if we kept, the 7 FTE that are proposed to be reduced in this budget, that's, we're approximating about $750,000 add.
Right.
So that would be another way to look at that.
right, because of insurance and stuff. Because
Yeah.
this is just salary on that one line,
Correct.
insurance is a separate line.
Right.
Got it.
Right. Other questions for Toby or Nicole?
If there were things that clearly didn't make it into this budget, what would be your top 3 priorities?
If we were further reduced, you mean?
No.
No,
If you could add.
What were the three things?
Yes. What were the things that you really the top 3 things that you really wanted in, but the budget just doesn't permit?
Like you're perfect.
In your perfect world, where it's like,
Perfect.
well, it doesn't have to be perfect. It could just be in the good.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I think this is as lean as we could get, and I think anything else would be a value add. I don't think we're greatly taking away from what students will need. I think anything else would be more, if we could even get more creative, but more the mental health support from the grant that might be coming. I think that, if we don't get that, that will impact us as the kids come up to us in the next few years. I also think that some of those trainings, obviously, for PD, anytime we can give teachers more trainings, they improve their skill set and improve what the kids need. And then, again, it's not our budget, but all of the building services.
The facilities.
Yeah.
And you feel confident that
Handy.
there's enough resources in this budget to, if there is a schedule change, to implement it with fidelity and with proper, teacher resources?
We do. I think the PD we have in at the time now and over the summer, I think the time we need to give to teachers is what's going to be the most valuable for them to plan and to meet next year and to really organize and meet the kids where they are and bring them forward.
We also recognize in conversations that we've had from administrators of other middle schools that have implemented blocks that it's the doing that is sometimes the best learning that happens. So yes, having a real toolkit of different instructional approaches and strategies and activities that help to transition with different learning during the course of the period, but also it's through the living it that really builds the practice and the success of the program.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that as we're living it, it's starting, if it goes through, the living is starting from a place that is already solid.
I think we'll have what we need. I worry that if it doesn't go through, the other options are scary. I think that would give us some more, a greater impact. I mean, our first, if we just go look at FTE in general to reduce, I think every schedule we've looked at, our number 1 priority was keeping teams. And if that's impacted, that would really impact our students and our teachers and the arc of their development over the 3 years that we have them.
I totally agree with you. Go ahead.
Based on Nicole's response just there, so do you feel that these changes at Middlebrook are budget driven?
I think that they are curriculum-based in what we think the kids need to develop, for the teachers to deliver the curriculum in math, to meet the standards in a different way in language arts, and to really dive deeper into the curriculum. What I worry about is if we don't move forward with this schedule that does meet our needs, and we look at it purely that we need those teachers or whatever, we look at the reduction force, that would be detrimental.
Yeah, here's the,
That's what I worry
and
about.
I'm going to just answer that question with Nicole, because, and I want to be crystal clear about this. It was Kevin's decision to assume that the schedule is going through, and I'll tell you why, in a second. If you look historically over the last 10 years at Middlebrook and look across all of the schools, every other school responds more sensitively to enrollment fluctuation. Middlebrook does not, because of the team structure. It's easy to actually account for a slight increase in students because you can add a 0.2 to
Right.
teacher teams. We've done that.
Yep.
But once you get below 1.0, it's really hard to do that because how do you account for a 0.8 across a team? And so the team has protected FTE even though enrollment's declined. I went back and looked from 15-16 to through the projected population for next year. It's 178 student reduction in that time horizon. In any other school, we would reduce staff. We
Right.
would. And so I think I think we have to account for enrollment change at Middlebrook through looking at the staff. I think that's a responsible thing to do. I think what's elegant here about the opportunity in front of us with the schedule change, and listening to the conversations around the schedule change has been fascinating to me because we've got people talking about distribution of minutes, increments of time, but what we're not talking about is learning and how kids learn. And you guys saw today in the classrooms at the high school the benefit of the block. You saw it because in every single class we were in, kids were grouped and they had time to collaborate. And the Middlebrook teachers have been telling us, I just heard a comment from Karen Brennicky yesterday that came out of the 6th grade reading IET. They don't have time because they're just feeling so compressed in that 41 minutes. And as we're thinking about the opportunity with the schedule change, we have to go back to what we value around teaching and learning. And I know that, a lot of them are really fearful. They're primarily, fearful and resistant because of the loss of their colleagues. And then the operating in a 84-minute block is new to them, so there's a lot of unknowns, but it's not unknown to us as a district. And I think we have ample evidence of the success of that. And then you couple in the, budget challenge we have in front of us. We know, and we've been told, and Karen's repeated it, we can deliver a good, thorough ELA curriculum in a workshop model with a department half the size by integrating reading and writing. To me, that's elegant. We're not losing, we're actually gaining. It's the human factor of the staff that I think is hardest for people to manage.
And I know we don't want to get into this conversation now, but to me, it's not the loss of staff. It's the actual
The learning.
schedule. No, the schedule. So it's, and I mean, again, I'm okay with I agree with you, that I think that Middlebrook has been able to buffer these enrollment declines. So I'm not even concerned about the loss of staff at Middlebrook. It's what the day's going to look like for the kids. So it's two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking to several teachers, that also seems to be, and I think I've had teachers say to me, they being the administration, are making it sound like it's the loss of staff. It's deeper than that. So just an interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys are in the building, so you can offer your own commentary based on
Well,
your
I
conversations.
think our
with
teachers
folks.
are incredible. They do an amazing job. They are so dedicated, and I think they're concerned with the unknown, like Toby just said. I also think that given the opportunity to have their kids longer, to be able to dive deeper, to be able to wrap around a little bit more in the small groups, I truly believe they can do amazing things. And I think once we get a year or two into it, the flexibility and their creativity will come out. But, you know, I think it's been a hard few years, and this is another change.
It's been a really hard few years
Yeah.
for Middlebrook.
Yes.
And when I have teachers say to me, like, we are miserable at Middlebrook. It kills me.
So I think our teachers are motivated by what is best for kids, and that they have questions and all of that too. And as Nicole said, it's going to be in the time and in the experience that's going to support that this is a change that's best for kids.
Well, more to come on that. You'll have
Yes,
February
that's-
2nd to really get into, with Jory, again, hopefully he's back in one piece, and go through some really fine-grained details about what it looks like and all the other whys and wherefores.
And Kevin, for the line item for the coaches, I know that we're going after the teacher and learning committee is reviewing the survey that was sent recently.
Yeah, so I haven't seen that survey yet. It closed
Last week.
so yeah,
So
so
we'll
we'll,
review that at
The next meeting.
the next meeting.
Yeah.
Perfect.
other questions for Toby or Nicole? We'll let them get back.
My last question, co-curricular activities. What is that?
Those are after school and before school clubs and intramurals. We have over 30 that students are really, really engaged in, and some that are really generated by student interest and us being a favorite teacher to help out and be an advisor. It's busy at Middlebrook after school on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, as well as in the morning.
And so that increase is just like,
So through contractual,
got it.
the teachers.
Yeah, so the teachers' contract.
Advisor stipend
Got it.
increases over time.
Got it.
If I'm not mistaken, there's also an increase in there. I think there were 3 new proposed clubs
Yes,
that were
that
potentially
wasn't- that
being
wasn't-
put forward.
There were 3 proposed clubs that were included in that.
Yep,
budget.
so that's intact.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Are you guys able to share with us how many students are in each club?
We could give that information, not off the top of our head.
It's a little fluid too.
It can
but
be.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
And it is an exciting thing that, that students can join at any time. So if you have an after-school commitment or maybe a sports activity in the fall, and you can't come to a Monday club, but then you find a winter time that you can join clubs. So it's nice.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate you coming over.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for all your efforts. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity. This is actually a presentation of the digital learning budget. I know that you heard from Eric and my colleague on Tuesday regarding technology, so this is the other part of it. And I'm going to start with, I put together a couple of pages that include some data I'm going to go through, as well as kind of like an outline, so that you can kind of follow along and see what the story is when it really comes to learning in Wilton. I started about 7 years ago. When I started, we didn't have the one-to-one that we have now. So we've come a long, long way. I like to do the timeline of what has happened in Wilton in a very short period of time. But taking us through that and going to, thank you, and going to being ready for the pandemic and lockdown and remote and all of the things that we're now like trying to forget that actually happened the last couple of years. And where we are right now is actually a really interesting story. So I'm going to start with just telling you kind of like my thought process and putting together the budget. When Kevin has, he did with all the departments, and I know the departments spoke about this, we talked about a very challenging year and that we really needed to come in at the 10% reduction. That meant a lot of work behind the scenes to actually get to that point, and I'm going to go through why that was so much work, as you can probably imagine, with inflation. And when you're purchasing these types of resources, that inflation that we actually experience on a day-to-day, when you buy your eggs and you're like, oh my God, what is going on here? It happens with these resources and tools and things that we're actually buying on a regular basis. So I wanted to really kind of look at it and say, how can we actually do what we need to do, effectively integrate the use of digital tools, but do it in a responsible, kind of sustainable manner? Meaning that if we start with this budget and we look at it this year, that it's something that instead of it keeping on going up and up and up, which is what we started seeing, we saw a lot of creeping, right? That we can kind of like really focus in on it. So in order to do that, you start with the why, right? Like, so I started with our mission and our vision, and of course our portrait of our graduate. And in the past several months, I've been working with a small team and this Future Ready cohort, professional learning, where we're developing a vision and a plan for our digital learning plan going forward. You know, we basically call it our digital learning vision for 2030. Sounds like a long time from now. It really isn't. And we're really looking at preparing students to embody the attributes of our portrait of the graduate through personalized, self-directed, and project-based learning. So with that bigger why, we kind of go down to what are the goals. So in this particular program, we provide the resources that support learning, right? Day-to-day basis, all kinds of things that, you walk into a classroom and you may see students doing, or you may see students at home, accessing different things. So we've got curriculum programs in every single content area that's actually supported by the district budget, online textbooks, so like their day-to-day, like what they do is actually all kind of incorporated with digital resources. We have lots of practice type of tools. You've seen the iExcels and the Lexias and all of those different really great tools that help with learning. We have our learning management system, that's huge, our Schoology. And then we have a number of productivity tools and tools that keep our students safe, like Gaggle, for example. We also then incorporate our contemporary literacies, as we came to call it last year when we did our curriculum review for digital learning, which is digital, information, media, technology, and STEM. Huge mouthful, but very specifically, we came to the conclusion we needed to update our keyboarding program. We've had keyboarding that started in second grade, kind of finished off in sixth grade. We have a new keyboarding program that we're piloting this year that we're hoping we do K-12 next year. By the way, for the same cost as what we've got right now. So we're switching keyboarding programs, same cost, getting lots more, which is actually going to be the theme of what I'm going to talk about, is I looked for things that we could get more out of for less, which is really quite a bit of doing, but we got there in lots of ways. Digital citizenship has become more and more important, right? Our students are, before pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, increased their use of social media by 2 hours a day. And it didn't go down. So you expected pandemic's over, nope. They are on social media, they're on more. So
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you say social media, how do you define that? Are you talking like Facebook, Snapchat, like those types of things?
TikTok.
Those,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not talking about our instructional
You're
programs.
not talking, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about social media.
Yeah. Okay.
So as a result, we need to do more and more instruction when it comes to digital citizenship and what I call really digital leadership, being upstanders, being able to see something is happening and actually talk to it and being leaders. We've used a free program for curriculum called Common Sense Media. I know a lot of you are familiar with it because there's a parent component, which is really, really good. But we've used it as part of our classroom instruction. We're adopting the cyber civics curriculum, which is Diana Graber. Any of you that have participated in the Wilton Youth Council talks where she's been featured, it's her curriculum. And we've begun using some of the lessons out of there. I bought like a pilot version of it this year. We've got it in the budget for next year to use in our secondary classroom, where this has become even more important, right? Like that whole idea of social media, your digital footprint, privacy, all of those things are just so important. A number of media tools that we use on a daily basis are in there, and our library databases, all of the research and information that even ChatGPT can't really bring in. So need to have that. I know that...
Fran, really quickly, are we outsourcing most of that? Like when you talk about the cyber civics curriculum, is that outsourced to companies that come in and talk to our kids?
Some of it, yeah. Some of it, you probably have seen some of like the Scott Driscoll talks and some of the experts coming in. We have a huge series of parent workshops, like we started with the BARC Technologies in December. It kind of goes into March and April. But our library media specialists also teach it, like instructed directly. In our pre-K 5 classrooms, it's a unit every year that they devote to digital citizenship. At Middlebrook, one of the things that will happen if the schedule gets adopted is that digital citizenship will come back. We had a course that was an actual quarter course in 6th grade for all 6th graders that actually, I don't know, was it last year or the year before, we didn't have it all. This past year we have it, but kids are just being pulled out of stride classes, and they have the class every like 6 to 8 days. Like they basically come in, do a 30-40 minute class, and then don't see our library media specialist for another week and a half to 2 weeks, which is not ideal, as you can probably imagine. So that will come back. And then at the high school, we have our digital literacy course that's done for all 9th graders. So it is actually part of our curriculum. We try to embed it and work with other teachers with it. But that's essentially where these lessons that I'm talking about through cyber civics are coming in.
Fran, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I was thinking if the schedule changed, that if we pulled probability and statistics, that a STEM class was going in its place.
That's correct.
Where's digital citizenship going then?
We're still working on that, but one of the things that we're looking at is that it is going to fit somehow in the 6th. It's only 6th grade that we need to do it in.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about STEM, as you can see next.
And is that for a quarter that the kids go through the digital citizenship?
Yes.
You said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how many weeks are in a quarter? Like 5 weeks, 6 weeks?
It's essentially what it comes down to is about 22 class periods. They meet every other day in a quarter, so it's like half a quarter. Yeah. You may be aware of the fact that we've been working on reviewing STEM for the district, which has been a great experience. We've had parents, I know Jen has been on there, thank you, and we've had some wonderful students that spoke up at the last meeting. They were absolutely phenomenal. And so basically what we've been looking at is shoring up our computer science part of STEM, so technology, and then also looking at engineering and having a pathway for both. We've talked about a program called Codalicious, which is actually a program that supports coding lessons, provides professional learning, gives a lot of support to the teachers, and really has a good scaffold across, especially grades 3 through 8. So that's a program we're adding, and it's going to fit in with what we want to do in terms of coding. If the schedule goes through, I think you've heard there would be a STEM course. That's a second STEM course. There's an iSTEM course that's taught by Adam Shopis, and essentially what he does, because it's 22 class periods, half of it is coding, the other half is engineering. So essentially we're devoting about 10 class periods to coding and 10 to engineering. The engineering design and actually creating, he uses Legos in his classroom. The proposal is to have at least those 20 classes devoted to coding and programming, as well as then keeping the engineering. So that is really where that would come in.
And would this be a continuum then? Sorry to interrupt, but like when my kids went through private coding, it's like you're building upon, you're building upon.
That's exactly right.
So
Yeah.
if you're starting in 3rd grade, then that curriculum builds in 4th grade. So how does it start the first year for an 8th grader?
So basically, we start with our coding program actually in Miller Driscoll. I mean, this would be, I was there a couple of days ago doing some informals, and it's wonderful seeing these kids. They begin doing Blockly with Scratch Junior in 1st and 2nd grade, and then we continue with Scratch at Cider Mill. So what our transition is going to need to be is going from Blockly to text-based programming beginning in 6th grade. But like you said, you need a continuum to get them through, all the coding fundamentals, which, Adam, to his credit, has done a lot with the 20 sessions. But when you start trying to do the application of with the
Like
Legos and
real
different,
coding, right,
it's
right.
not necessarily a true coding experience.
Right.
So what you may have had with your children outside is that true scaffolding, which is what we're hoping to do with this course.
So it was identified in the curriculum review, there's a gap, and they're trying to find ways to fix that.
Is this covered by other state standards that cover this
Yes,
curriculum?
computer science standards were adopted by the state of Connecticut like 2 years ago. And, we began our review last year, so we're really, kind of like trying to keep up with exactly when it happened. So we're hopefully, if this course goes through, we'll actually be able to provide a true coding and programming course. Very excited about that potential. So one of the other parts of this, and you won't see it in the budget because we really need to continue working with that STEM review committee, is robotics. Robotics is really, really important. And there's a version of it that Adam is doing right now with Legos. We're looking at a lot of other components of it that we're going to work over the summer with him and the curriculum writing process. As an example, we've done some PD on drones, right? Drones are cool and kids are going to be very excited about using them, but they also have a real practical value. They're used in all kinds of industry right now. And guess what? You have to code them in order to work. So, that coding is part of using, some of these new technologies, which is really important. So, as an example, we would buy the drones. Like, we need to buy some of these resources in order to support this. The next goal you'll see is around our communication plan, which is actually a good news story. Last year, we moved from Final Site, which was, we had them like for 5 or 6 years in terms of our vendor. We went to Gabbert, which has in the meantime gotten bought by a bigger company called Parent Square, which is a big communication platform. So we're really good at, selecting really great programs because they got bought out. But in the meantime, we saved about $10,000 last year, and we're going to save another $15,000 going into next year because of the fact that we won't be implementing next year, so we won't have additional startup costs, but they are much less, and we feel that the product is better. So again, that's good. There will probably be more that we need to look at, and some of the work that we'll do in communication will have to do with looking at all the different tools we use for communication, and can we consolidate? Can we find something that does what Remind does, for example, which is that text communication system? So we're going to need to really take a look at everything that we have, and that might, show some savings. Even though it's not in my budget, it's in the school budget. You probably have heard from the different schools potentially about their library learning commons. The budget that especially it funds library book collections is really important. We spent probably the first 5 or 6 years that I was here trying to get our collections to a fairly acceptable
21st
age.
century.
Sort of. We went from 1998 to the 2000s. We're like at anywhere from 2007 to 2010 now. As years go by, it's we're kind of already like getting to that, getting a little old. But you cannot get rid of books if you don't have enough books. So even the weeding process, gets hindered by not being able to buy new books. And then, in every single library, we have maker spaces, innovation studios, et cetera. And then just, as a note, we have been very fortunate and are extremely grateful to our PTAs and WEF. They're both been huge supporters of our library learning commons and our innovation studios. We've got the entire podcasting suite here at the high school that was as a result of WEF. So that is, another grant that comes in. We continually look at tools that we have, and we look for ways to either leverage them or to find ways of getting other tools that do more, because it's just the only way that we can actually keep the costs down. So what I just went through was essentially, we're providing the curriculum and instructional needs for all of our goals. We're trying to find cost efficiencies, which have, by the way, taken at least 1, 2, 3 meetings with each vendor in order to get them to rates that we can live with. And then we want to leverage what we have. Sometimes you don't use something as well as you could, and you could use it better, and then keep with that. So I did talk about how the cost has gone up. It has gone up anywhere from 5 to 10% a year. It is absolutely something that, other than looking at the numbers, you wouldn't be aware of. So I have a couple of examples here that I just want to talk about. Newsela, you probably are familiar with if your students come home and they're doing their,
that beep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, get your AirPods on.
It's integrated literally in every curriculum area, because I look at the stats, and it's not just ELA using it. It's social studies. It's science is huge user. It is used everywhere. We have become extremely reliant in our units of study, in our lessons, and our teachers use it on a daily basis. Let's take a look at the costs now. Back in 2019, we were paying $14,795 for Newsela. Next year, the cost has gone up to $27,000. It's just one tool, one story in terms of what's been going on in this area. Gaggle has become so integral in how we deal with social emotional learning, self-harm, so many different issues. We've caught and we're made aware of so many different problems that students have based on alerts that we receive from Gaggle. Gaggle provides us with alerts from Google Drive, Gmail, the docs, and also chats. So everything that students are doing within their Google accounts, if something comes up that is of a concerning nature, whether it be questionable content or it's as we call it, a higher level self-harm type of situation, we get the alerts. The admin get the alerts. And it's become really, really important. It's something that we wouldn't do without. It's how we do a lot of our business. So the cost that I wanted to show you is that when we first started, it was about $15,000. We brought it down to $20,000. That went up about $5,000. And we've been doing that by cobbling things together. Like this past year, the reason you see a little bit less than previous years is because we also use Bark, which is a different service. But it's harder because then you have to go to one dashboard for some of the alerts. You've got to go to another one for another one. It makes administrators' lives a little bit harder. But we're trying to kind of put it all together. And then just like a news story, I just wanted to show you Naviance. Are you all familiar with Naviance? Mm-hmm. College and Career, Common App.
Wait, are we using Naviance now? Because the previous page you said...
we are using Naviance.
So reviewing our use of Naviance for college and career.
Yeah, so let me just
primarily at
explain
the high school.
Yeah, we're still using Naviance right now. So you see that it almost doubled in price in the few years that I'm just showing it. So I began looking to see if there are other opportunities, and we haven't actually gone to anything new, but we began looking because when you start looking at what a particular tool gives you, it's fairly limited and it hasn't been updated in like 15 years. So you start looking and you think, oh my goodness, maybe I can get more for the money. So essentially what we're doing, we're looking to see if there are other opportunities out there that will give us more for our money. So that's the story on Naviance.
And Fran, quick question, this is apples to apples, so like, if you look at Gaggle 2019 to 2020,
Yep.
we're getting the exact same thing.
Well, no, it's actually worse. Well, and I will say worse. We're getting less for the money.
Okay.
Support, and this is like in everything that you probably have also experienced, support is not what it used to be.
Right.
I used to be able to call and get a person on the line.
Right.
I now do not get that. I have to put in tickets. I have to, it's very, very different world.
But like using Naviance, are we using more, because the previous page you said leverage it more, so like that double in price,
We're not using it more.
We're not
It's
using
just the cost, yeah. And so
Right.
it's one of the things that we have to do is implement student success plans at middle school, and the best tool to make that happen would be a tool like Naviance.
Right.
And so we just haven't gotten there yet, but we just looked at a comparable product that's going to probably, it exceeds the capacity of what Naviance actually does.
And I just keep hearing like, and this is a side note, but just like that Naviance is taking the place of actual one-on-one sitting with a college counselor, which is upsetting to like a parent. Like,
Yeah.
So have we gotten to that point of-
Bob would have to speak to that. You know, I mean, what's powerful about it, and I don't know if you've started to look at it
Yeah.
yet, but, you know, as a database, it's remarkable.
But it's based on like numbers. Like, what is your this, what is your
Well,
this,
so
what is
there's
your data?
there's a lot of data about colleges and you know, professions. So you know, and it's all linked. So kids can do interest inventories in Naviance that'll expose them to careers. They can look at careers and they can back out of that into like, you know, which colleges and which majors support those careers. What are the, you know, financial earnings over a lifetime, things like that. So there's a lot of information there. I'd be too far out on a limb to speak to how
it
school
works here,
counselors
yeah.
are supporting kids in the use of that, or you know what they're doing with kids.
Yeah. They're just, it's just an example of like, can you then take something and make sure you're getting all the features and everything that a Naviance has, but can you get even more? So we're looking at a couple of platforms, maybe it'll work out and we'll have more for the same money. So if we can get something else for $8,000, it's actually really in our benefit. So that's essentially the thinking behind it. I just wanted to be very specific about what is new and what's being cut and what we're reducing, so you just have an idea. The overview is that we still reduced by 12%. The budget was reduced by 12% for digital learning. And the cuts were made coming out of many different lines. The process was one where I included every school. I sat down with ILs. We communicated, our tech ILs sent surveys out, and we looked at usage. And that's why I gave you this, because I wanted you to see, you know, some of the usage charts that I use in order to come to these conclusions. So the new programs were based on our curriculum review and some of the new things that are coming out. But when you start seeing some of the things that were cut, they were cut based on usage, like Discovery, for example, which is the online videos. I don't know if you've seen those, but, you know, used very little, and confirmed by our teachers. So as a result, I was able to save about $20,000. So like if I can find things like that that make a difference, I can pull those and make it work. Book Creator, we had K-12. The usage of it is much, much higher at K-5. So I kept it there, and if there's a few teachers that really need it in the secondary schools, I'll be able to work with them. Nearpod is another good example that over the years was a great tool, and we used it extensively during the pandemic. Isn't used as much, but we have a group of teachers that use it extensively, so we're keeping some licenses. So I can reduce licenses and make a difference. So you can see that obviously over the course of going through all this, we were able to make some good reductions. The last page, you can see that, you know, when we make decisions about what we're going to keep and what we're not, we're really looking at usage data as well. I presented the top graph to the Teaching and Learning Committee about screen time. Obviously, over the last couple of years, usage went way up, but it has been coming down. And that's really the good news, is that it has been coming down.
But just to clarify that this is not like their own screen, this is.
Right,
This
these
is
are our
this is our
tools.
Right,
tools.
right.
This is our tools.
So like,
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
talked about.
What goes on at home or on
Oh,
their own
yes.
devices.
Well,
we
no,
have-
not even at home, like look in the library right now.
Offset
they're all
by
on their
social
phones.
media.
Right.
Yeah, it's social media.
They're all
versus-
sitting on their phones outside.
Versus like going on Schoology or
Right,
going
right,
on.
or
yeah.
doing whatever they're doing on their phones.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so I almost wonder if this is down because they're like, put my, get on my other device.
Yeah, interesting. And then the top tools will, give you kind of an idea of what students are using on a regular basis. And it's not surprising. Schoology continues to be, obviously, number one, but then you have all the Google Suite products, and then you see Kahoot, Excel.
Is this ours or students, the graph?
Oh, students, I'm sorry.
The
yeah,
x-axis.
students, yeah.
And question for you, Fran, you said when you were talking about discovery education, you said when I can find things like that. Do we regularly reach out and survey the teachers and say, here's everything that we have, like how impactful is this for your day-to-day?
Yeah, so, part of my process was really working with the teachers and seeing what was helpful to them. I had initially kept, for example, social studies textbook, which is a discovery product. It was a social studies department that told me that they used it very, very infrequent.
And how often do we ask the teachers this? Like, do you do that monthly, yearly?
No, I don't do it
quarterly?
monthly, but it doesn't really make any sense to do it except for, once a year.
Got it.
Mhm.
Is it all budget prep? Is that when you're reaching out to teachers?
When I was creating the budget, yes.
Is that typically when you do it, though,
Yep.
right? To always
Yeah.
follow. The new Zella,
Yeah.
looking that it's continuing to increase, is there something in place of it? Have you guys found something else in place of it? that
There
is-
really isn't, and I have actually looked, and I think they know it. That's why it's been.
That's why
yeah.
they can.
I mean, we're in the wrong
Yeah.
business. We need to compete with
think?
Gazella, seriously.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I was thinking about this when we were talking about Fran's budget, and if you look at just kind of the evolution of technologies, instructional technology over time, like go way back, and it was CD-ROMs or floppy
Yeah.
disks, but you bought a thing, and you had the thing until it broke or got outdated, and then you bought another thing, and now we've really evolved to annual subscription services, and so now it's licenses, subscription services, and so the
So smart for them.
right. Somebody 20 years ago had it figured out.
Is there a way, so you have, I'm just curious, like the top 50 tools, is there a way that this, like another chart side by side, that then these tools are organized by costs?
What do you mean?
By class or by grade?
Like
How much they cost.
How much they cost.
Oh, how much they cost.
Oh, sorry, was that not clear? How much they cost?
Oh.
So like literally, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
just so you can just look comparatively to
Yeah.
cost
Yep.
to usage. It doesn't have to.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That would be helpful.
Mhm.
So the cost per district, like how much does Schoology cost our district specifically?
Yeah, it's I have it in front of me, but it's 30,000 plus. But when you look at something like Schoology, that this is what's always amazing to me.
Right.
It's about 33,000
For the whole district?
for the whole district.
And it's used by 50,000.
Right, as opposed to, well, I'm not saying Newsella isn't used because it's in the top 50, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's like-
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, we're in the wrong. Wow.
Yeah. But, there are a couple of things in here. For example, Learning A to Z, we had only 50 licenses to it. It was a $17,000. And we made that cut after lots of discussion with Karen Brennicky and the folks at Miller Driscoll. That's who uses it the most. Because they had used it extensively over the pandemic, because obviously they didn't have access to their classroom libraries, so this actually gave them their classroom libraries online. When we started looking at it, we said, you know what, the most important part of this are the assessments. And the usage on the assessments was zero, essentially, like very, very little. So we decided that if we can move the teachers, and they were all really very willing, and a lot of them are doing it already, to Epic, which is free. Same kind of program, actually has more books, more ebooks that are available. $17,000 is a lot of money for that. And it's each year, like Kevin was saying, it's not 1 year where you buy the books and you've got them.
Thank you, Fran. Anybody else have any questions for Fran?
Just to the physical library books, do you have, or can you send to the board how many we should be buying, based on whether it's ALA or some other standard, and then how many we actually are buying?
Do you want the cost or like how many books?
Well, I think just whatever the standard is and how far off how far away from the standard are we or best practice.
And
Who makes that standard again?
I assume it's the American Library Association.
It's $20 per student, but I can actually do the whole,
Fran, can you do that and then do it per school?
per school, yeah. Yeah, what happens if you don't actually go, it's all formulaic, if you don't go by the formula, that collection age I was telling you about, it goes,
Right.
it starts slipping.
Precipitously.
Yeah. It's like maintaining things. They're not maintaining the collection if you don't do that.
Are we still buying like books for Sora as well?
We are, actually, it's in my budget. So we do that because Overdrive is actually a district kind of subscription. I have money in my budget under professional books for Overdrive, it's Sora, and we buy all the ebooks through there. The high school makes great use of it by buying classroom sets of particular books that they use in some of the English classes. So, and we have better rates on them because they will allow us to buy it for like a period of time as opposed to having it over years. So if we can buy something for a 2-month period, we're sort of renting it from them, and it works.
Thank you.
That's great.
Great. Any other questions for Fran?
Thank you.
Good. Much appreciated. Jose, you're up. Welcome. So we have Jose, and then Kim will be on tap after Jose.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Great. So just to set this conversation up a little bit. So as you know, we look at facilities through kind of 2 distinct budget categories. One is the operating capital, which is in our budget that Jose is responsible for. And then there is a whole other category, bonded capital. That's a line in the budget that's managed by the selectmen. So I'll just recall your attention to the conversation about the high school elevator last year. Right? Where does it go? How much does it cost? How many years? La, la, la. So that's really the bonded capital. So for a number of years, we have been talking about and deferring major capital improvement projects at the Middlebrook. So we had Miller Driscoll renovated, and then we were able to do some renovation work at Cider Mill, and then we were teed up to do similar kinds of work at Middlebrook, and pandemic, life, budget, etc. We kicked the can down the road. We've had personnel change. So where we are today, there is, and Dawn, correct me if I get any of this wrong, but so, Chris Burney has kind of semi-retired. He's focused on the police station. We've hired a new clerk of the works and a deputy clerk of the works. So Jeff Pardo has really picked up, he works for the town, and he's picked up Chris's responsibilities as they relate to the Board of Ed and our facilities here. When we met with Jeff earlier this year, one of the first, and just by way of background, Jeff had worked for the Stanford Public Schools for many years, and so he's got a really deep background and understanding of school facilities. Jeff had proposed that we conduct a 10-year facilities study and planning project that really looks at the high school, Middlebrook, and Cider Mill specifically, and then, in kind of the most recent round of conversation with him, he does want to take another look at some of the mechanicals and things at Miller Driscoll, just because codes have changed. But the primary focus of that study will be the 3 upper schools. there is money available on the town side now, and so he is beginning I believe the RFP process now, and we're hoping to do that work, sometime in the next several months as we go through the RFP process, engage an architect or a firm, and then do the study. The outcome of that study, we'll get whatever information we get back, and then, we'll have to, work with the town to prioritize facility upgrade projects and then target them, wherever it makes sense in the capital bonded plan. So all of that is to say that work is in progress. You're not going to see any of that in this budget. Okay, so it's the 10-year study first, and then we prioritize, and then we, peg the projects likely to the appropriate points in the bonded capital budget. You'll recall last year, Lynn had dropped into that bonded capital plan placeholder sums, and so those will change and get refined over time. But I would expect, probably the first thing we would see is in fiscal '25. We don't have, and Dawn, maybe you can just help me with this. Jeff had put in front of the selectmen a week or so ago a draft of the bonded capital plan, and there continues to be school projects on there, HVAC, roofs, and we have a moisture issue in the floor of the Peterson wing of Middlebrook that we have to address. There's another elevator that needs to be replaced. Mandy, there's like a handsome young man hanging out right outside. Isn't that your guy right there?
Yeah, that is. And
right? So smart and talented. Check him out.
Playing chess.
Right? Playing chess.
Without his phone.
Welcome to the Wilton Public Schools.
Yes.
Anyway, so that, I think the feedback Jeff got was that he needs to prioritize some of those things. So I don't think that...
It was just in front of Lynn on a one-to-one department basis.
Okay.
In front of the full selectmen.
All right, so that draft is not ready for prime time, but it will be soon, and as soon as it is, I'll put it in front of the board. All right, so that's where just to be clear about kind of the major facilities projects, what Jose is going to walk us through is the smaller projects really under his purview that are contained in this proposed operating budget across all 4 facilities.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here, for your support with our department, our facilities. I want to thank Mary Ann for all her hard work that she does. I had the opportunity to sit in front of her to go through my budget, and I survived it, so now I'm here. So with that being said, a lot of the items that are proposed in my budget are day-to-day reoccurring, contractual services. The big ticket item that you'll see in this budget is the cameras. We did an assessment, and it was something that we felt that we needed to address. At Cider Mill, there's a section of the building in Bellman Hill that does not have camera access, but Lewis, our electrician, already had run all the wiring. So what's nice about this proposal is that we save a lot of money from the fact that we have the IT department that are helping us out doing all the network drops and working with Lewis. And then also having Lewis, our electrician, I can't speak enough about him. He's just phenomenal. He has saved us so much money in our district, and it's just continues to help us out and always willing to do the work. So with that being said, that's the big ticket item, $233,000. But I could walk you through, each school. We have at Miller Driscoll, if you see replacement light fixtures, you're going to look at that and say, well, this is a school that was just renovated. Well, we ran into some issues with some of the lighting fixtures that are there that are discontinued, and they're offering us a newer version at anywhere from $350 to $800 a fixture. So what we've done is we put aside money, and we are installing 2x2 LED fixtures, which we installed over at Cider Mill. We're getting them for $30 a fixture. They produce the same amount of lighting, they're dimmable. So these are the things that we're trying to do to offset costs, because of the simple fact we can't sit here and spend $3,000 in a classroom, which was just renovated 4 or 5 years ago. So that's something that we've encountered. So if you see that number in there, that's to continue to make these improvements. We took care of 2 art rooms already. There's the preschool area are encountering issues with the lighting there, where half the lights are not working. They're LED strips. Those strips you can't purchase. So that's a cost there that we didn't really anticipate having to do. But we work with Eversource, and they've given us a really, really good price on these fixtures. If you ever had the chance to go to Cider Mill, you'll be able to see the fixtures that are in the ceiling. It's very, very nice, clean. One big area where we had increases is if you look for a security specialist, it's a contract agreement. It's $11,270. The agreement that they originally gave me was upwards around $80,000 for our schools. But working with our IT department, they're able to offset some of these costs by doing the back end work, checking to make sure that the data drops are working with Lewis to make sure. So we paid for those services in the past. So now we were able to bring those costs down, but it's still pricey. We have them come out whenever there's a badge reader that's not working. They're able to come out and replace it. If there's a camera, our cameras are already 10 plus years old, so they need to be replaced. And the prices that we're getting for replacement cameras are outrageous, anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. But again, we could utilize our electrician to be able to install these cameras in. And again, there's a cost savings there. One thing that I wanted to mention too is that we also, our HVAC technician, who we retired last year, Mark Esposito, he's well missed. We're doing contractual services. It's working, but we don't have that person that we could go to and that builds that relationship with the staff and know that they could talk to an individual. We're trying to go back to hiring an outside technician. We have a couple candidates. We'll see how that works. But in this budget, and I think Marianne noted it, that if we do not have a candidate, that we need to transfer the funds to cover that service contract. So we're going to use his FTE as a basis to cover the service contract. But again, we really want to move towards hiring a person and have someone here. As far as upgrades to the buildings, I mean, again, there's really not that much. We want to replace at Cider Mill, there's some gates. I don't know if you've been at Cider Mill, the upper part by Comstock. We want to install a gate there. A lot of our kids are playing in the playground area, and they're, the balls are running down the road, and next they're on, school road there. And then on the lower section, down by the north end, we want to try to get that done. We put it in the budget multiple times, but sometimes there's not enough money, or it's not a priority at that time. But I think that it really is something that we really need to look at.
Jose, can I interrupt for a second? Would you mind, because so much of your budget is tied up in contracted services, would you just summarize briefly each of the different contracts, what they actually do? So you've got Siemens, security specialists, commercial kitchens, and then security solutions in here also, just so the folks know what each of those things do. So
in our district, we have two companies. We have Siemens, who monitor and take care of our fire system at Cider Mill and at Miller Driscoll. So they're responsible for the smoke detectors, fire alarms, pull stations. So that's a service agreement we have with them that they maintain. Security specialists take care of our district, the whole entire district, the cameras, badge readers, updates on our software, which they're working with our IT department. That's throughout the district. Commercial kitchens, we introduced them this year. We have a new manager for Chartwell's, William Thomason. He recommended them from Westport. They will be taking care of all of our kitchen needs as far as the equipment. They'll come out and inspect and do any repairs that need to be done, which is new, but again.
So for that cost, they do the repairs, or they're just telling you what repairs need to be done?
Right, they'll tell us the repairs that need to be done, and then the cost that we're paying them hourly is at a fraction, because we have a signed contract agreement.
Got it.
Right. Security Solutions is our monitoring company for all 4 of our schools for the alarm system. So they basically are the ones that call us when people are trying to get into our building.
So that's the burglar alarm.
That's the burglar alarm.
Siemens does fire
alarm.
And what is fire at high school in Middlebrook?
High school in Middlebrook is ITS. ITS is a vendor that we're using. So there's 2 different groups. I try to get them all on get one vendor, but it's just, that's the system that we have, and they're proprietary. So we're kind of stuck with these 2 groups. Security Solutions, again, is the monitoring company. I put money in here in the budget. They're doing an assessment now of our facilities to see what doors need to, like sensors that need to be replaced, because there's a lot of zones that we're bypassing because of the simple fact of, just wire getting broken. So the money I put in the budget for this year is to cover that assessment for next year, because I don't have it in my budget now to make those repairs. What else is in here? And we have, as far as contractual side for the HVAC, we have Main Enterprise, who are contractually taking care of Miller Driscoll, the LG units there. They're a distributor of that product, so we gave them that contract. ESC is doing the remainder of our schools. They're doing Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school, the train units. We have a service agreement with them. And then we still have a train service agreement for when they did the renovation in 2009, I want to say, when they did the upgrades to the train. So we continue to use them. So those are basically our main contractors that we're using in our facilities to maintain our facilities.
Do we ever try and work with other schools to try and get a bulk savings, like from a contractual standpoint?
We looked at it from the cleaning aspect of it, for supplies. The difficult part is a lot of the contractors, the other schools are using different product or equipment than we're using. So like the LGs are more proprietary, so we have to use Main Enterprise. I've tried to get our cleaning supplies all lumped in together to see if we could get a discounted rate, but it just never really came to fruition. Like no one really wanted it, because the schools they like the contractors that they're using and provide a service. But that's something I could reach out and see what the other facilities
does that ever go to the superintendent level, that you guys buying power?
It does, and so it's hard to regionalize that kind of work for the reasons he just described.
Right,
We're all schools are different, the equipment's different because of the vintage. But it's kind of an ongoing thread. The state tries to support that, so there's a competitive bidding list that the state produces, and so the idea there is when we pull a vendor from that list, the pricing is supposed to be competitive in some of the
Keyword being supposed.
Yeah, right. But it's a challenge.
Let's see what else is here. One thing that I put in here for the high school that you would notice, as far as a piece of equipment, is the auxiliary gym mat. That mat's been there since I've been 22 years, and I think it's time to replace it. So we put it in the budget in the past, and I think it's time. So that's something that I would hope would survive. Again, the big ticket number is the cameras, $233,000. We have classroom furniture for each building. We look at Miller Driscoll, what a beautiful building it is, but we still have the old furniture that we're using. So it's something that we really need to try to put some money into so that we could support the teachers there. And it's throughout the district, so it's something that we could really use.
So for the security cameras, have you all done like a priority list of like, if we didn't do them all at once, what would be the first round and how much and second?
Yeah.
So right now I looked at it as an increment of $75,000, so that would address Cider Mill. And then when I say address Cider Mill, Belden Hill, the issue we have at Cider Mill is that the playground areas, we have limited coverage there, access. So this will take care of those issues over on the Comstock side of it, and then also by the north end side. And then we go over to the high school. On the third floor, there's only 2 cameras. And that's something that when we first approached had the assessment done, we were more focused on the exterior of the buildings. The high school, one thing we want to address is the field house. Since we can't have cameras in the field house, we want to put them on the exterior of the doors so that we could get better coverage of what's going on in our building or outside the building. We have games that go on, and a lot of activities happen outside, so we'll be.
You can't have cameras inside the field house?
Well, we have an agreement with the teachers union that we don't put cameras in instructional spaces, and so this has been an ongoing debate with them for a long time. Some of us have strong feelings about what should be there, and so
what defines an instructional space?
Yeah, so right now we're we're not in agreement about that, and we have not installed cameras there. Similarly, we don't have cameras here in the media centers, and other large instructional spaces.
Do we ever look into, and I know this is a silly question, but when we talk about cameras, and I know it's a totally different level, but Ring cameras are $99. It always seems to me that when you're looking at institutional cameras, it comes with a contract and it comes with layers of stuff that builds up that price.
The interesting, I have used Ring cameras, especially down where the Chartwells is, where the service lines are.
Yep.
We've looked into purchasing cameras like that for them because it's easier for us to install it on their device or their computer. But when you look at it from, a building level wise, it doesn't have the support that we need. And I think Eric could probably, speak on that a little bit more. There's a lot involved when we're able to look at a camera, and there's licensing behind it. With the Ring camera, it's just it's more residential. But I have done that, and we're actually going to install one at Middlebrook in the Logan Dock area for the Chartwell staff.
It just seems like all those cameras come with a company that wants you to buy their camera, and now you're signing on a 5-year contract, and it's just like this circle of...
Yeah, I think there's a quality difference, and so the ability to zoom in with some of these, industry
and have someone sitting there watching it again.
And you have the passive monitor that comes on.
So right now in my office, we have a TV in which the cameras are rotating throughout the district, just so that we can make sure that that they're recording, and then just to make sure that there's nothing really going on. So, but the quality, to get on the quality, again, kudos to Eric. We went from 480i to 1080p. Now we have the ability to really zoom in and look at a license plate. Before it was just a blurred image. So, again, working with the IT department, we're able to fine-tune things and make the improvements that provide a better place for our students and staff. So.
Can you send us your breakdown of priorities?
Any other questions?
Good. Just what we had Jose build some years ago was just a 5-year plan, so we could kind of map out costs, and then knowing that we do engage in kind of deferrals, trying to prioritize. So there were a couple items here that were added and then removed from the final budget proposal. So a proposal to add a gym partition at Miller Driscoll. That was something we talked about years ago, and we're actually going to try to fund that through some of the surplus that had been in the continuing ed account prior to the pandemic. That account has been expended now because we were covering salaries through the pandemic. So that's I think a nice to have, not necessarily a need to have. So that has been deferred. There was also a proposal to replace the motor for the Middlebrook partition, and I think that's been deferred also.
So,
Kevin, how often are you in contact with Lynn's office for the bigger items, some of these bonded items?
So we work hand in hand with Jeff. I mean, Jeff is very responsive, and he's keeping us in the loop. I'm really looking forward to this assessment because, again, if I really was to identify all that needs to be done, it'd be a ridiculous budget.
Right.
So we're in constant communication. I met with him today. Eric and I met with him today to discuss some
Can you
options.
give us the top 3 big ticket bonded? Besides knocking the high school down and building a brand new high school. I know that's on the table.
I would say addressing the rooftop mechanicals at Cider Mill and Middlebrook. We've been talking about it for quite some time, and I think the number was just off, and now we're going to do an assessment and get an accurate number. So that's the number one for me, especially coming out of the pandemic, even though we're still in it. But to provide fresh air and the way that these rooftop units, and we can manipulate them at the high school in Miller Driscoll. We don't have that luxury at Cider Mill and Middlebrook.
And isn't the rooftop unit the one that shut down Cider Mill for a day because of the... Is that a
That
rooftop?
the variable frequency drives were blown.
Yeah.
Yes, and so right now it's basically on an on-off switch. It's
Correct.
not because those things haven't been replaced yet.
Yeah, so we cannot go in and tell the unit what we want it to do. So
Right.
it's just stuck, and we're running it pretty much, almost 24 hours just until we get our frequency drives, which should be due in anytime now.
And what else are the big ticket items you're talking about, Jeff?
I would say that. I would say the removal of the carpet in the facilities at Middlebrook and the high school. We have a lot of indoor air quality issues when it comes to that, and we have proof that backs it at Cider Mill. You know, Cider Mill, we removed the carpet, and we're getting less and less indoor air quality.
And that would be a bonded issue.
We also looking at the ceiling tiles, upgrading the lighting. There's certain parts in the high school where there's not even carpet. It's just backing.
Yeah.
And the carpet itself has gone past its life expectancy. I don't even think it's functioning in the manner that it's supposed to. So, you know, we had a plan in place. We were supposed to continue and do Middlebrook in the high school. COVID came, and you know, there's other things that are pressing. But those are my two top that I would say. And then addressing the restrooms in the field house. We have restrooms in the field house that are 1971. They're not even able to accommodate the staffing. Track, go to track.
Yeah.
There's lines walking around, and then it also impacts our security, because now we have to offer restrooms inside our building so that we can minimize the flow of traffic. So those are the three I would say that are
Right,
are
and
huge.
roof replacement is not finished either, so I mean, that would be on my
But
list also.
that's still on the bonding
It is.
schedule already,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So did I understand you correctly? If we bond all of this, nothing will really, to this level, happen in our schools until the 2025,
So it won't be,
2026?
right, so you won't see, well, you will see in the bonded plan, there continues to be money for HVAC, money for roof replacement, and I think the elevator is on for next year. Some of these other things that Jose is talking about, you know, flooring, lighting, those kinds of, that will prioritize based on this 10-year study. And I would expect, you know, a year out from now is when we'll have a concrete plan, and we'll start to see funding appear on that plan for those kinds of things.
So this summer, we're projected to do the roof at Middlebrook. That's something that's on the bonding. And we're doing I think Jeff put out an RFP to address some of the rooftop issues in the Middlebrook auditorium.
Yeah.
And in the gym area.
Right, so this is, I mean, kind of it's a bit of a bird walk, but you know, we're also, you know, hoping to capitalize on some of the federal grant money that's available. And so there was a program announced a few months ago. He really, to his great credit, scrambled, put out an RFP. We were able to hire a vendor to do a concept paper. The concept paper was submitted this morning. And so now that will go to whatever reviewers, I don't know where they are, it's Department of Energy or someplace. And then we'll get some feedback, and the feedback will be a recommendation either to continue because it's a favorable concept paper, or, you know, go back and revise it and try again in the future.
Okay. My only other question was the furniture. So our schools seem to have furniture on their list. You also have furniture on your list. Are you both requesting?
It's not duplicate.
Okay.
No, so the Jose's budget is where the furniture
He's talking
lives,
about.
right?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
So, and just, you know, Jose puts about 100,000 miles on his car traveling from this end of the field house to the far end of Miller Driscoll and back.
Can we just get you a
as he
golf
is.
cart? Like an electric golf cart?
To borrow
Yeah. Tell Bobby.
Yeah.
Forget that.
Yeah. So I just want, these folks need to know. So I got a call from, I think it was over the Christmas break or sometime, I got a call from the police department at about 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. They're like, you got an alarm going off. I don't remember which building. So I call Jose, and he's like, yep, I'm on my way. I'll be there. And so that's the kind of service and response we get from Jose Figueroa.
Thank you.
Thank you. He deserves a golf cart.
The golf cart won't go to Miller Driscoll.
Yeah.
Thinking about it.
Comes out of my discretionary.
Totally kidding.
This is
Thank
true.
you.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah.
We'll get you
Thank
a
you.
company car, little mini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put that in the budget.
Yeah.
Having the bonding stuff. I mean,
So frustrating.
I can't tell you how frustrated I am. We've been talking about this
I know.
for a really long
Yeah.
The
time.
fact that we're still
And I'm
saying
sure
the word
you're
elevator.
equally as frustrated. I get the big thing, the big picture items. Like, you have to have a school that functions, but when I look at what our kids walk through every day, it's, in their words, kind of sad and depressing. And that's what, you know, in a world where we keep talking about social emotional learning and all these concerns, I feel like
I know. And
right?
just-
Everybody's trying so hard to help them, and I if they were just in a brighter space sometimes, it might go a longer way than people actually think.
Yeah.
I think that's where this all sits for me, it drives me nuts.
I know. It's a, it's, I've heard you echo that before, and I don't disagree. I think in the big budget picture, it's not to say that these things aren't priorities, but, to really want to do it the right way, because we're talking about, pretty major capital outlays.
Right.
And I suspect when we kind of complete this study, the magnitude of what we're going to want to do or will do is probably going to be greater than what we were initially thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for that reason, and then also just really, again, trying to, just work with the town and try to support all of the various needs. I think we can wait a little bit longer, and we know that it's a priority, and we know that as a priority it will continue to grow, but I think I think we have to hang on a little bit longer.
It'll be 2028 then.
Well, I mean, I think,
We go back to that whole thing, right? Our
No, I know.
kids have one opportunity
Yeah.
going through each grade, and I just see the clock ticking, and our kids are
Our kids are gonna be
gone.
gone, and then we'll
We
start
have to have more kids so that they can
Well, I don't even
appreciate
mean my
this.
kids, I just in general, I just.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
just-
and that
it's
argument applies to a
crazy.
lot of what we do here,
Yeah.
right? It does, and I believe me, I am. You can ask him. I walk around these facilities with my phone in my hand, and I'm snapping photos and texting him. What about this? Get this done. What about this? And so I share your sense of urgency.
I mean, are there, does it help to talk to the board of select, what helps?
Yeah,
what,
well, I think so.
What can we do?
Last year we went through this conversation with the Board of Finance, and I do think, you take someone like, Rich Santosky, who's on the board, who's got kids here in our schools, who's, he probably sees as well as any of us, where the facility is showing its age, and so I don't think it's a lack of desire. I think it's a question about let's really do it the right way, and when and how much. And so, I wasn't focused in on a really good, thorough facility study until Jeff mentioned it, and so I just thought that was a really good idea. And again, my hunch is, we'll probably learn more than we were suspecting if we didn't go that way. And then I think with that information, that's when you really raise the alarm, let's get this done, and then we try to, garner some support for the projects, whatever they may be.
All right.
Sorry, I know. Right. So there's some good news. I think some good news. Dawn shared with me, on the camera front. I had heard from Lynn a while ago, and she had some interest in, trying to find maybe some alternate ways to fund this. And she's had a lot of success on the town side with different grants. And so this might be an area of opportunity where we can fund the camera installation separate from our budget. So that would be, that's, almost $250,000. It is $250,000 in savings. So, stand by on that one, but that would be really good news and relieve some pressure.
I also heard some great news yesterday. Andrea was saying that other schools are looking to come into Genesis, just as a...
Yeah, so we have, I think we just took in a second tuition student, I think from Bridgeport. And that was, something, again, we had talked about at the inception of Genesis, that, we have proof of concept with the model. We know it's working. If we have capacity, it would be an opportunity for other districts. And so I think she's got, one or two more maybe in the hopper that could come. And so that's, and the tuition there is about $45,000 per. So, that is real money.
Because the average is 35, is that what it is?
Across the district.
Across the district.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Kim Zemo is here, and why don't we take a few minutes? We've got about 25 minutes.
Kevin, while Kim's setting up, on the very first page, under summary information,
yes,
page 2, you break it down into cost per pupil.
Yep.
What is district? So you have Miller Driscoll, Cider Mill, Middlebrook, Wilton High, Special Ed, and then district.
Yeah, so district would be anything under, so if you go into that district tab, so it's my office, Chuck's office, Kim's office.
But how does the cost per pupil get defined under district.
Right, so Marianne, do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, I don't mean to put you all. I
Yeah,
just-
that's okay. No, I think
When I'm like looking through, I'm like, how do you have a cost per pupil through district?
yeah, it's an aggregate of those departments that are listed under district
Right, you're really
divided by
just
the
taking
student
the
population.
total of what you're expecting your enrollment to be divided by the district cost. Because the 3742 is your total enrollment, right?
No, and I get that for like, the cost, we can talk about this later, but cost per pupil for the high school, I get that. The cost per pupil, the $3,000 per pupil for the district, I just didn't know where that number came from.
Yeah, so it's the any cost that we would associate to
The administration.
to the district administration, right?
That's correct.
So, but not much is changed. The biggest change was with our Panorama survey subscription. Since we are surveying every other year now, we were able to cut that down. To cancel it for a year, we would lose our data, and we have data over the last 2 years, and we're in the process of surveying our full climate survey now. But we will have limited access with that next year because of the cost. We won't have the support. They do professional learning as we kind of move through our data, which we'll be doing this year. So we're going to try using less of the suite for the off-year of service surveying. So that's the big shift in the budget. And then also some smaller areas where we were doing more prevention work and supplies. In working with families, our Teen Talk series, we were not able to do that during the pandemic. And the staff just does not have the time right now, sadly, to do that work because of the day-to-day crisis intervention that they're doing. So that's in the budget for next year.
Do you have clubs and stuff that are in the budget?
No, I don't.
Under your budget?
Well, for the high school budget, we have a new club that we launched this year, Hope Squad, that
Yep.
will come into funding.
But that comes under, yeah, but that's under the high school and not
That's under the high
yours.
school.
Got it.
Not under mine.
So Kim was, we've been trying to collect data around just the mental health challenges and concerns we're seeing among students. You're aware that we continue to have routine calls to 211 and the need for crisis intervention. One of the questions that we've been trying to better understand is the distribution of time of our mental health employees, so psychologists, social workers, etc., and how much time they're spending doing crisis response versus some of their more kind of planned required activities supporting IEPs or doing some more of the just proactive counseling that comes as part of routine. So do you want to just kind of
Sure. So,
describe the landscape?
without overwhelming people with collecting too much data, really, because we look at the number of incidents, but that doesn't tell the whole story because one intervention could take the entire day. So having staff look at a 5-day week and really start to kind of look at the hours in terms of crisis intervention versus what they're kind of mandated to do through the IEP and 504 process. And we're looking, our social workers are doing about 40% of their day in a 5-day week to crisis intervention. School psychologists around 29%. This is at the secondary level. I haven't looked at the elementary yet. We're seeing, a large increase at the high school specifically in terms of kids needing intervention. But that's, taking away from kind of the daily work. So, that's certainly a shift and an increase that we're seeing.
But these necessarily, when I looked at the budget, Kevin, this might be a question for you, but these aren't necessarily special ed
Correct.
children.
So
it doesn't
maybe, but
necessarily,
it's-
but it
No.
could.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily
Just
fall
anybody.
below.
So
That's
it
right.
doesn't necessarily fall under,
No, and I mean, you told me some, alarming stories today, and so we have crisis teams in place in all of our schools, and as part of their protocol, they have what they call a watch list, and so they're aware of kids who may have some concerns because family's falling apart or some other issue, and so someone's checking in with that kid, just paying attention. But this year we've had a number of kids experience really acute mental health crises, suicidal ideation attempt, and these kids are not kids who are outwardly on anyone's radar, and some of them are not tied to special ed at all, and so that's been I think the increase in that number of kids in that population has been really alarming, and
Especially when it's,
Right.
someone that's not on the radar. somebody we've been working with, and we know, and we screened, okay. But when it just, when we're seeing more kids just kind of pop up, at least from our perspective, the other stuff going on, but not that we're aware of, we're not presenting that way necessarily in school. And I had another call after we met this morning with another student, so it continues to be a concern.
I know that you guys are doing a lot and have been through a lot, so I also have a question about whether you feel like you and your team have proper support. Because if your team is not in a place that can emotionally handle or manage what's going on around you, then that affects your ability to provide services as well.
I mean, I work closely with the high school team. I mean, they are a very skilled team, and they're doing a phenomenal job. The sustainability of this, I think, for anyone in general, it's hard when you see kids in crisis day in, day out. But I'm confident that they're handling it at this time. The question will be, are the numbers going to continue to rise? And what other things we can do. I think that the hard thing for this school is the lack of resources in the community. And so we're identifying kids, or families are taking kids to the ER and being released. It's not the best process, but that is the process that's in place, sadly. So, if you're in an acute mental health crisis, going through the ER can be difficult in general, and then to maybe not be connected with supports right away and have to wait. That's stress on certainly the family and the student, and then we serve as kind of the gap until we can get them into services. So I think that's where the tension really is.
And the outside resources are all filled up, so there's hardly any
waiting lists
to go.
Yeah. So it's challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have like talk through like colleagues in the area? Do you have a resource in that respect where you guys are kind of looking at what's going on in the other schools? Yes, I know that you're not, but I'm just kind of a collaboration in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally meet with Westport and New Canaan on a regular basis, and the group just got a little bigger with, I think, who's going to be coming on as the mental health director for the Darien Public Schools. So it's someone that we have worked with through another agency with DBT services. So she'll be joining, and so trying to share resources and kind of address the needs. If there's something we're not thinking of that someone else is doing, so we just share information.
So I saw initially that you had took out an IL, right? Requests?
Last year I had requested, I had put in the budget for like an interventionist a position, and that didn't make it through. And I know we're not putting new positions in, so my other way about it was this idea of IL for elementary and secondary, in terms of having the time to support some of the SEL initiatives in each of the buildings, because it's hard trying to do that over 4 schools. And we have people in the different buildings that are championing the work, but to kind of create a position where they could focus on this solely within that building, or at least secondary and elementary.
Secondary and elementary.
Yeah. Okay. So the vision for that, kind of moving forward, to scale up some curriculum and programs that we're doing. And I think to have time to get into the classroom and, like the academic coaching, but to be able to kind of help teachers.
Like help the
strategies.
classroom teacher with strategy.
Yep.
One of the areas that we really need to, think differently about is, why we're seeing the number of kids we're seeing in crisis. Mm-hmm. And so we've had some preliminary discussions about how we might do that, and with some gentle family interviews, just to try to uncover some themes such that as they may exist. But one of the questions that keeps coming back to me is, are we adequately staffed? And so I put that question directly to Kim and to Andrea and to others, and the answer that came back to me is yes, we are. And the challenge is what Kim described, is that the gap in services in the community and what happens as a result. So kids come back to school after not being seen, and then it's our folks who are there to try to, manage a kid who may still be in crisis. And right, and so they're spending time doing that work and not doing, some of their other prescribed responsibilities. We've got to do some work internally and try to come up with a process that's going to give us some better insights. But on the community front, there is a group that's pretty active and vocal. You probably saw the letter that they sent to and published in Good Morning Wilton recently. Collectively, we're planning on hosting a mental health breakfast and just, again, try to raise awareness and the conversation in the community. So Andrew Gerber is going to come and keynote. There'll be a panel presentation afterwards that's specifically... I don't know if they actually
have a formal
name themselves, but, so it's
kind of like a task
Jeff
force.
Palma and Vanessa Elias, Nikki Lasher, Lara Pascalides, Chandra is also, and so there's some really good constructive dialogue with that group as we've been trying to really get our arms around what's happening and where the gaps are. And I think, in the last conversation we had with this group in my office, I don't think there was clarity about, where the problems are. And so people are operating on assumptions. So we have to, for months now, Kim's been trying to collect data just to help the rest of us understand, what the patterns are and try to make sense of them. And so then this is the next step, is to really raise this, across the community and, work with Sarah Heath and company at Youth Services to just to look at the continuum of supports as they exist, and again to just to calibrate and what you're seeing, is that what we're seeing, and when people are being placed, how do we know that, and what are the lines of communication and so on.
But also, even if that doesn't get better,
Then what?
Then how do we help our staff manage what's going on within the confines of the school? So I think that's also something that should be looked at in tandem, because if what's going on outside that we have no control over is not getting better, and there's only so much our staff, even though if that was better, we are adequate, well-staffed, there's only so much that we can sustain and maintain for those kids that are also in crisis, but also for the other kids who are then having less regular attention paid to. It's kind of what worries me, especially if the time horizon, if we're talking about having more mental health professionals out in the community, and that's licensing and education, those are things that don't happen overnight.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I can say, and we should at some point have Cece and Keith come back and speak to the board, but there was last year through the legislative session, there was a lot of conversation. There was some good legislation passed. We're seeing the evidence of that in the Better 211 response this year, but there continues to be a real focus legislatively on mental health concerns across the state. I don't know what form or shape it'll take yet in terms of new legislation, but I know there's pretty wide interest in trying to do more to support kids and families.
And the other thing I failed to share, we did hire our Teen Talk counselor. We were able to kind of combine monies from our attendance intervention and Teen Talk to hire her full-time. So that gives us a great resource in addition to outside her connection with kids in crisis and the 24-hour care and all of that. So having her on campus full-time for the first time ever is, I think, going to be a real
and she's at the high school.
She's at the high school. Part of she will do a few hours on attendance intervention throughout the district, but her primary role is here at the high school. Okay. So it's already been helpful to these, some of these more complex cases that need outside supports.
Has there been an impact on the just the school counsellors? I think there's an assumption that they're helping the kids get into college, but really they're having more and more of their time taken up with crisis intervention. How are they doing?
They're busy. Yeah, they're busy as well. I think we oftentimes with some of these more critical cases, we're teaming. There needs to be the school counselor as well as the mental health person in terms of who's supporting the family, who's supporting the child. So it's impacting all of us at this point.
And this is going to go on for a while.
I see things shifting.
No, me either.
Which is why we really need to think about it from the systems.
Yeah, long term.
And I think, being a small community, we don't have a lot of resources within town, so
Right.
that we can, that we
Can tap into.
yeah, and would kind of prioritize our kids. So it makes it more challenging.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Anything else you want the board to know?
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Oh, did Jose left? The cameras are critical.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, from a safety perspective, and some of the student issues that we deal with, makes it really challenging for those spaces where we don't have cameras.
Did you team up with Jose for like the priority cameras kind of assessment?
No, I wasn't
Okay.
actually involved.
The high
We
school
talked about it,
administrators
but-
joined when
Okay.
we had the assessment done,
Okay.
along with one of the school resource officers.
Okay.
We did site visits at each building.
I wasn't involved in that. But I'm on the back end when we're trying to investigate something and we don't
Have
You don't
the-
have the- you don't
coverage.
have the
It
right
becomes a
camera.
real problem.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a good priority. Thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can we spend 10 minutes just asking the general budget questions?
Yes, of course. You can.
So, I was reading Lynn's thing about the climate of the budget. Have you started thinking, if this budget doesn't go through, like, what can be cut? Because to me, it's a really hard.
I have. I mean, I started there. That was the 10%,
Yeah.
reduction before you even saw anything, before I saw anything, because I just was aware. Yeah, I am, and I prefer not to go into detail right now, but I have some things I think I shared with you already when I was making assumptions about this budget, assuming that the Middlebrook schedule goes through. I built in a 7 FTE reduction, and so we're also assuming that we know that there's a total of 10 teachers that could be impacted. So, there were 2 that were kind of unassigned. There's 1 that we would reassign to STEM, and so there are 2 FTE in play right now. And so I held those out because I'm anxious to see, what happens with that mental health grant. And so the opportunity there would be if the grant comes through as it was proposed, then we would hire 1 additional psychologist, and then that grant would absorb another 2 staff. If we got nothing, we have 2 FTE in play to make a decision about.
Got
and
it.
so the decision would be, you can assign those FTE to something else, or you can reduce.
Got it.
So those are hanging out there. I've been, I think I'm not, terribly optimistic, but I think we have a conversation coming up with our insurance broker on the 31st. And, I think the pattern we've seen is Anthem continues to overstate the allocation rate, and our actuals bear that out, and so we're always in this push-pull. The one thing that's different about this year is that our claims are higher, and so I think what I'll be looking to see from them is, has the pattern begun to wane? One of the theories was that this was really just a COVID bounce, and so if that's the case, then I would hope that we'd be able to make some reductions in that line. I think, the other piece that we've just been watching is, just energy, so fuel,
Right.
those areas. And then, after that, I think you've heard, thematically that, the kind of the non-personnel accounts is about as tight as we want them to go. And, people are, struggling to manage what's there. And so then it's if we're going to make further reductions, we have to look at existing programs. And so I have some thoughts about, what those programs would be. But I think that's where, you guys too, as part of your deliberation, as you're asking questions and thinking about this budget and what it needs to be, I would expect that, you'd be thinking about that too.
Yeah. No, and that's why I was wondering. 2 questions. The FTE change, someone told me that that would impact the high school at all as well.
Yeah, so the way that it'll work, right, and I think this is one of the misconceptions that's floating around right now. So in our collective bargaining agreement, there is a RIF process. And so every certified teacher is assigned a RIF number that's based on degree and years of experience. And so if those positions at Middlebrook are eliminated, it doesn't mean that those number of teachers are going to actually lose their jobs, right? So Maria and her staff have been working on that RIF list, and it's early, but we have some preliminary understandings, and I think every building is impacted, right? So you've got potential changes.
It filters down.
Well, it depends on the certification.
So it's like K through 6
And the seniority.
Right. And in a middle school, it's unique because you could have certifications that are K6, or 8, or 712, or all of those. So it could impact all buildings.
And then I keep thinking about this cider mill conversation we had yesterday, and I think it's because I saw one of these events that the child was running down the street. How can we possibly do something there to help these kids? Because I just feel like this is going to be us before Genesis.
Sure.
Like, if we don't do this now, it's just going to compound and compound.
Yeah. So I guess I would amend your statement just a little bit, just to affirm that we are supporting those kids. But in terms of the program that Andrea was articulating yesterday, they need to go through a formal process, and that hasn't happened yet. Like, they need to actually commit to a proposal in very much the same way that Genesis and Community Steps were proposed. And so it's, what's the data, what's the presentation, what are the cost benefit, how's it going to be supported, what are we anticipating, and we need to vet it that way. In my opinion, having a conceptual conversation doesn't get us there. And that's not to say I don't support the idea or there's not a need, but we really need to have a rigorous process to vet it. And so that's something I've already spoken to Andrea about.
Okay,
and
that's what my question.
Yeah, she's been thinking about it.
But they can actually now move it into like a process.
Yeah, and they should, and I think, again, this is, just experientially, and, this is my experience here in Wilton, it's my experience with my former staff in Bethel. People, when they come through a budget process, right, they're kind of thinking this way, and then needs shift, time changes, things happen, and then, what was a priority in January is not the same priority in June.
Yeah.
And so, so I have a little bit of comfort based on that experience, knowing that when we push back at some of these things, it just introduces rigor to people's thinking, and really, is this really the issue, and how do I know, and so on and so forth. So I think going through a really formal proposal process will help them.
How long would you expect that something like that would take?
Not long. I think they got an idea. I think they need to really look at their data. And I guess part of that too. We have a lot of staff in special services, and so what one of my expectations is, and would be again, is show me that every other staff member in this department is really maxed out and being utilized in the right way, and how do you know, and then play some scenarios out. So what if, rather than add, we shift, right? And that's a conversation that's very common here. But if we're really thinking about creating another facet to the continuum of services, then again, I'd want it to be really kind of evidence based.
So how long will it take them to get us that kind of information?
Like 3 months, 6 months, a year?
No, I think it's weeks, not months. If you wanted to see it as part of this budget cycle, I could ask them to put
I think if it's possible, yes. My bigger concern is if you end up outplacing a young child, that just exponentially is a crazy number.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess that's what my thought,
I agree.
one of my concerns would be. I think it is
They
hard
wouldn't
to
do
pull
it
them
until
back.
it was absolutely desperate, though, because that's just not.
It sounds pretty desperate now.
Yeah, but it didn't sound like outplacement was kind of on the board yet. Because that has to be at the end of a very long road to do that for such a young kid.
Yeah, we've got some, we've had some kids who, our environment, it wasn't the right environment for them, and so we've had to find an alternative environment.
And those are 11, right? That's their
I think she said 7. Did she say 7 or 11?
11.
Yeah.
And
One at Miller
But 6 at risk, I mean, at serious
Yeah,
risk.
so I had, that was, I don't think I had 11 in my head at Southern Mill, so that was something I made a note to myself about.
Yeah, if they could potentially put some work into it prior to this budget, it would be great
Sure.
to see that.
Okay, yep, I'll make it happen.
And then the ESSER grant, or the grant, when do we hear back from them?
The mental health grant, we were initially supposed to hear before the end of December. That became the end of January, and so I would hope soon. Other questions?
In conjunction with that, I just also would like to have a better understanding of how we came up with the reserve, outplacement reserve number.
Oh,
Yeah.
yep,
Like the estimate of,
okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
and like the,
Yeah, so why 25 and
why 25,
the dollar
yeah.
amount? Sure.
Mhm, just to,
And then prior to our budget discussion, can we add into the budget discussion the survey results from coaching for the whole board and the teaching and learning committee?
Yeah, I haven't seen them, so let me, I don't know what.
I just want to make sure that the whole board
It's going to come to the whole table.
reviews that. Well, it's coming to teaching and learning first, so I just want to make sure that
It might not go to teaching and learning first, it might just be a committee of the whole to the whole
it's
table.
on the agenda for teaching and learning.
When is
Yeah.
your meeting?
Either, we will
February, I just want to make sure.
Share the
whole-
information.
Yeah, I
February
understand that.
2nd,
Yours is
3rd,
February
is that
2nd.
date?
It's the first Tuesday in the month? so
Yeah,
it'd be
whatever the date
that
is.
Tuesday,
Next Tuesday?
probably,
Or 2 Tuesdays from then?
or the week after?
It's the week before, it's February 10th.
Okay. So it's the second week in February.
Yeah, so I'll work with Chuck to just
Sorry,
to go
I'm
through
looking at the wrong
the.
month. It's February 7th.
7th?
Sorry.
Okay, so you've got.
Do you guys have ideas of what the budgets are in surrounding towns?
Been tracking it, and I think everybody is in the high 4 or 5s. There are a few that are. I just saw New Fairfield's budget earlier this week is the same as ours. Bethel is about the same as ours.
And Westport and Weston?
Westport was like 5.3.
5.3.
Weston was either high 4s or low 5s. Yeah, everybody's high, for probably about the same reasons, give or take, whatever.
Is that your main discussion tomorrow? With the superintendent's budget?
We'll definitely be discussing budget. We'll also be discussing legislative priorities. So we're in the long session now, and it's just fast and furious, the kinds of bills that are being proposed. And so we have some work to do together to prioritize some of our own collective thinking. So there's just to give you an example, there's a proposal that some of the Democratic leadership is really supporting to address the education cost sharing grant. So that's the equalization, the aid equalization grant, not the SPED grant. And it's in terms of the direct impact on Wilton. Wilton is one of the towns where, under the current law, even though we've had $1 million taken away from us in 5 years ago, under the law we're still overfunded, and so we'll lose 8% year over year. So that I think the bill proposes to hold that steady. But there's another feature that proposes to have the state cover the cost of tuition to interdistrict magnets. So the dollar savings for a place like us would be about $8,000 or $9,000. For different towns around us, it would be much more substantial for a place like Bridgeport or Norwalk, because they have magnet schools and send a lot of kids to magnet schools. But we have to talk about supporting that, and there's just politics are in play there. So, but we have to look at the Right to Read legislation. So all of the Durgay districts, function very similarly in terms of their reading program, and so we've already, kind of gotten together as a unit and have spoken to legislators about that. There's a long list. So, and what else is on my list for tomorrow?
we can perhaps provide that we can work on an update to the board on it.
Yeah, by all means.
Okay, 3:05.
Okay.
Workshop is over.